Welcome back to the course. In this lecture, we are going to talk about lightning, their differences, and how to place them in the scene. Before we discuss lightnings that can be set up in the scene, let's take a look at the ones that already exist in the scene by default in this template, which is directional light. And this lightning here is the sun. If you go to the settings, details panel, to be more precise, and change the intensity, it will increase the sunlight or decrease it depending on the value you put in. At 0, there is no light, essentially. And at 1, it is very low. I personally prefer 3, as you can see, but you can change the value as you want. The light color, as it is understandable from name, change the light of the color. Color of the light. As you can see, we can give our scene a different vibe. For now, we will keep it as it is. The source angle does not really matter as much. The default angle here, the source angle, is the same as the sun itself. And if your main source of light is the sun, you might as well keep it at this value. This is also not something you should be worried about. You can increase the temperature or decrease it, which will affect the color hue. Again, not something you should really be worried about at this point in time. And we can ignore the rest of this. We could remove cast shadows, which will remove all shadows casted by this source of light. When you have multiple sources of light in the scene, you may prefer one specific shadow from that specific lightning source. So in that case, you can just disable other ones and keep that one. Or you can have multiple light casting shadow from multiple sources, and this object will have multiple shadows casted from him. But it's better to not have hundreds of lights which all of them are casting shadows in a tight space, because that's just a waste of computation, like optimization for your game. And obviously effect world is kind of mandatory in most cases. Okay, now let's talk about the lights that are actually something you can just place into the scene in a smaller manner. So if we go back to this set we have here, it is very dark. And let's say we want this sun to be not this high up in the air, we want something like sunset. We can change the direction of the sun easily by pressing Ctrl L and rotating the sun's direction. So let's have something like this. I am moving around my mouse while holding the Ctrl key down. Yeah, let's do it like this. A bit on the darker side, and now it makes more sense to have lightning here. You could always, to place lights, click on this icon on the top and go to lights. Or you can click on the window tab here, place actors, and go to the light tab. I will keep it like this just to have an easier time explaining what each of them does. We already talked about directional light. You personally wouldn't want to have too many directional lights in the scene, so usually one directional light from the main light source, the sun, is enough. But you may want to have multiple smaller lights. So let's talk about point light first. This is point light. This light has a radius. Let's take it outside the camera for a second. The circle around defines its radius. Let's hide our sunlight for a second, so we have easier time seeing. Source radius and soft source radius are interlinked. If your source radius 0, your soft source radius does nothing. So for demonstration purposes, let's make it smaller and increase the source radius. It doesn't have to be this big to have any effect on soft source radius. It can be literally 1. When I increase this or decrease it, you will notice the difference in the lightning on these far objects. Let's do it like this. What it changed is the fall off, at which radius it begins to have less and less light. Usually it's not something you have to mull too much over. You can keep it simple. And for now, let's take a look at the last one, which is source length. So if we put source radius like this, and let's too big, let's make it this, and do this. So essentially gives it the height. So rather than a bulb here, now it is a giant, it looks like a giant elevator that emits light. It's not really something you will have to meddle too much, and you can ignore it most of the time. And let's restore this light to something proper. make it bigger. Let's make it a bit bigger, I guess. And again, it's the same as before. Affect world, cast shadows or not. We can ignore all that. Now, let's take a look at the next type of light, which is spotlight. You may be wondering what spotlight does. It's a lightning source that, as you can see from the shape, let's increase the intensity a bit, is a light that affects only a certain area. So, like this. Let's move the details panel up so it's easier to see. You can increase the attenuation radius, which increase the length. You can rotate it. As you can see, the x-axis doesn't really do much, but you could rotate it in y and z axis to take a look at that. Make sure to place your light the way you want. It is the most commonly used type of light in games in general and in scenes, because if your lamp is in a certain direction or your light source is supposed to focus on a specific actor or direction, it is easiest light to use for these purposes. And we have additional things here, which is inner core angle. As you can see, increases or decreases the cone angle. What inner cone and outer cone does is, inner cone is where the light is at its brightest. So the intensity of 160 we have here is applied to the inner cone. So let's do it 40. And outer cone is where the fall off begins. So if we have 40-40, we will have a very sharp fall off. If we have inner core at 20 while fall off at 40, we will have a softer light with a fall off after inner core of 20. If we had at 0, all of it will be soft. So you could make it as essentially into 5 to focus on a certain object, if there is any. Let's say we have these cubes here. And if I stop clicking on the light, so now we have a light that focuses on the objects. So we can increase the radius because it seems a bit too small. And we can do outer cone angle even smaller, but not as small. We have an object that's suspiciously lighted up in your scene. Rest of the options are same as before. Source of length doesn't really do much in this case. And we can move on to our next light, which is rectangular light. So, what rectangular light does, it is a source light in the shape of a rectangle. So let's rotate this to shine the light on the ground. And let's increase the source size so it's easier to see. And also let's change accentuation radius so have easier time seeing. Unlike previous lights, this has a particular shape. So if we change the source height or source width, we will have a specific shape for our light source. So light now is focused in this direction. If you change this, like this, and put your barn door angle like smaller, it will be a very crisp rectangular shadow. Then decrease the length or increase it depending on how crisp or square you want your shadows to be. And you can do it like this to get a very specific kind of shadow. Now, before we move on to the next lecture, add some light spots to your scene. This will be your task for now. If you don't have any light sources, make sure to just add some. Be creative. You can add anything. It can be a lamp, it can be a torch, it can be a fireplace. Do whatever you want with it. Get creative. Don't overthink it and go way too complex. Just keep it simple. We will talk about how to do complex lighting with interactivity in the next lecture. So for now, just make sure you have some space where you can add your lights and move them around. Maybe add some color to your scene. You may want to make a disco color, whatever, up to you. Have fun. And see you in the next lecture.